Okay, so our next story of the day is so, of course, we all know that HBO, or I shouldn't say HBO Max just rebranded themselves into Max yesterday, and they came out with a bunch of different stuff. They're coming out with a new Harry Potter series, a Big Bang Theory spinoff. We've got a new Game of Thrones series coming out. Not to mention, they've got The Last of Us, and they've got a ton of other content. So, that being said, the gloves are off because MGM and Amazon. So Amazon, you have to understand something. Amazon owns all of the whole MGM library. So we're talking about things like a RoboCop and a Legally Blonde and a Stargate, um, and of course they own all of the James Bond. They are now coming out and they are introducing spin-offs or movies for all of these IPs that you see here. So this comes from Deadline, and it says RoboCop, Stargate, Legally Blonde, and Barbershop among titles in works for film as and television as Amazon looks to supercharge MGM IP. MGM's extensive film and television catalog built over the past century was the main driver behind Amazon's $8.5 billion acquisition of the storied Hollywood studio. For the past year, since the deal closed in March of 2022, Amazon Studios has been sifting through MGM's library, identifying about a dozen initial titles for film and or television development. This includes, as pictured here, RoboCop, Stargate, Legally Blonde, Fame, Barbershop, The Magnificent Seven, Pink Panther, and The Thomas Crown Affair. We hear A-list creative Spurs have reached out to inquire about adapting MGM IP, which they're fans of. Additionally, Amazon Studios has been leaning on its own roster of IP of talent for some projects. Each talent is approached differently. Some are steered toward film, some toward television, and some other ones are getting both movie and television treatment. For example, Amazon Studios is in active conversation on Legally Blonde, both for a movie and a potential television series, sources say. They already have been on and off efforts to get a third Legally Blonde film off the ground for the past 5 years. Amazon has similar plans for Stargate. We hear both film and television installments are considered, with a movie likely going first. RoboCop also is being talked about for both film and television, with a television show possibly first, Deadline hears. Additionally, Amazon Studios is actively developing television series based on Fame, Barbershop, and The Magnificent Seven, sources say. There are discussions about a Thomas Crown Affair movie as well as a Pink Panther movie, which could be animated, sources say. A Poltergeist project is a possibility down the road, we hear. Deadline has already revealed plans for a Creedverse spanning film and television, which Amazon Studios has been discussing with franchise star and filmmaker Michael B. Jordan. The studio also just made a first-look deal with Sylvester Stallone and his Balboa Productions for film and television. We hear expanding the Rocky brand into television may be a part of it. There are plans for there are plans There are currently no plans for other James Bond series beyond the unscripted competition announced shortly after Amazon's acquisition of MGM's close as the franchise producers are focused on figuring out the next film installment. Okay, let's talk about this real quick. Lot of stuff. lot of stuff. I think the thing is this. You have to understand that some of this stuff is 25 years old, even older than that. So you take like a Stargate, okay, which, has had, television spinoff into SG-1 and everything else. And that did okay. Stargate was pretty good for a sci-fi picture, okay? Kurt Russell, William Dafoe, bunch of other actors. They find this portal, they are transported to a different time. So you could essentially jump through time and jump through universes. It was pretty good for its time. Um, Legally Blonde was a huge hit back in the day. Huge hit. I could see them trying to bring that back, even though they've been trying to get that off the ground for the past 5 years. Barbershop, maybe. That would probably work better as a streaming show. Okay, just my thoughts. Um, I don't know how big of a hit another barbershop film would be. The market might be out there, though. It has to be done well. And RoboCop. And I think RoboCop is the biggest one out of these because when you look at the grand scheme of things, okay, we've had a couple of different iterations, right? We had the 1987 version with Peter Weller, okay, which was incredible. Incredible. The director of that film went on to do other films like Total Recall and, Starship Troopers and, of course, Basic Instinct. Um, the sequels, I never saw the sequels. They just weren't as good for me. Okay. That all being said, I think the fact that now that you're actually trying to develop this stuff, I think RoboCop would definitely work as a feature film. Okay. Now, the reason I say that is because there was another one that just came out. I want to say it was 2017. I could be wrong about that. And it was a bust. It was an absolute bust. And I 2014 actually. So it will be 10 years next year. Okay. It will be 10 years next year that remake came out. That was horrible. I love the 87 version because there was so many different dynamics to it. Okay. You had the man versus machine. Okay. You had the um how human aspect of it. Okay. Wanting to actually keep the human element to the character, and yet he was a machine because he was broken up. He had a memory, okay, and that was the big thing. And then he was off to do good and fight crime. I I would say this. I think if you're gonna go do a RoboCop movie, okay, and I don't know how old he is off the top of my head, okay. I mean, the last time I remember seeing Peter Weller was Star Trek Into Darkness. Okay. Peter Weller, I want to say, is right around 75, 78 years old. I'll look into that right now for you guys. Anyways, I think that what you have to do, okay, is you have to go and get Peter Weller. Because if you don't, okay, um, if you don't, it's so he's 75 right now. Okay. That's not horrible. Okay. Now, could he do exactly all the things that he did back in 1987? Of course not. But I think it would be fascinating to see this. I think it would be fast. Now, the question is, would he want to come back and do it? Okay. It's been quite a long time. I think that, I think this is the major one out of it. Okay. The fact that they're not developing any James Bond material is fascinating. Um, No Time to Die, I didn't care for it at all. It was too long. I didn't like the villain. Okay, it was just had a multitude of problems to it. Now, the only reason I feel like Raleigh Malek got it, and I could be totally wrong about this, guys, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments for this. The only reason why Raleigh Malek got that is because he won the Academy Award for Bohemian Rhapsody. That's it. That's it. Because the script was terrible. I didn't believe the whole third act. Now, that all being said, I think MGM really has to, clean their palate, okay, and get the bad taste out of their mouth because not a lot of people did. But before you can move forward with James Bond, I think they learned their lesson with that. They have to, because they will never do another linear story again. They've learned their lesson. That being said, they have to find the next James Bond. So if they've got all of these things in development, okay, you're probably not going to see a James Bond movie for at least 5, 6, 7 years. I think people, I think MGM wants people to forget about No Time to Die and like, you know, go away into the night, and then you might see a another thing. Because here's the problem: the minute they decide that they have a James Bond, the minute they decide, okay, we've got our James Bond, people are going to say, okay, what's the story? When are you going to start developing him? Because they want to see it. It's turned 60 years old this year. Don't forget. I mean, you've had a multitude of different people play the character. It is probably the most iconic character in film of all time. Of all time. I mean, so that all being said, MGM. I think if they're so let's run through these real quick. So I think, okay, if they're going to do all of these um, IPs, okay, and by the way, like I said at the beginning of the thing, I think this is in response to Max actually showing up with all these shows. So let's say they're going to do all these IPs, okay. I think Barbershop would absolutely work as a streaming show. I don't think, I just don't think a feature film would work for that. I think it would be much better for streaming. And it would be more cost effective. Okay, that's just my own personal thoughts. Okay, Stargate. I think what you do, okay, I think you could put a streaming show together, okay, 8, 10 episodes or whatever you want, and then go out and do a feature film. Because if you just come out with a feature film, there's no context to it. But if you do, because you have this whole, library, if you do this, I think people will watch this on Amazon Prime. And that's how you get it going. And then when the feature film comes out, there's going to be more buzz for it. Legally Blonde. I think, look, they've been trying to get this up and running for 5 years. Okay. Um, I think, and this is another thing that I'm going to say to like RoboCop. If you bring anybody back besides Reese Witherspoon, I don't think it's going to work. And mind you, obviously, I got to preface it by saying this much. It all depends if they want to come back. I mean, you have to pay them some money. I mean, not as much as Reese probably, but because that's who they remember. Okay? When you have iconic characters like this, this is who they remember. So you've got to do that. RoboCop. I think RoboCop could be a feature film. And you say, but the other one's not even 10 years old. Right. But here's the thing. You could actually I won't say totally retcon the 2014 one. Okay. But you could absolutely, if you want to take elements out of that, that's fine. But you could actually tell the story of when we see RoboCop at the end of that first film, okay, you know, we see him, as that law-abiding thing, the cop, okay. Now, RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3 were just cash grabs. Let's call it what it was, okay, because the first one did so well. That being said, I think that you could hypothetically tell the story of what it was like for, um, Alex Murphy. I mean, now, mind you, this only made, so you have, let's put this in perspective. This whole film made $53 million on a $13 million budget. Now, it made 3 times its money. Okay? There's something to be said there. Now, I think you could bring him back. I don't know. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. I just can't see anybody else playing RoboCop. It's like Freddy Krueger for me. I grew up in the 80s. Okay, I'm an 80s boy. I can't see anybody else but Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger. Or if we're going to go down the Hellraiser, Doug Bradley. I can't see anybody else but Doug Bradley playing Pinhead. Anyways, that's my thought. So I think what you do is, to finish this up quickly, you RoboCop is a feature film. Legally Blonde, you could actually do as a streaming series. Stargate, you do as a streaming series and then a movie, and then Barbershop would definitely be a streaming series. What do you guys think about these IPs? And by the way, guys, let me touch on one other thing. They're actually considering bringing the Magnificent Seven, the Thomas Crown Affair, and the Pink Panther. So those are three I didn't even talk about. So I don't know how you do the Magnificent Seven. I love the remake, 2016. That was fun. I mean, the old one with Yul Brynner and is a classic. You can't ever touch that. Anyways, guys, what do you think about all this stuff? Which one of these IPs would you like to see turned into a movie? Which would you like to see turned into a streaming show? Which would you like? Who would you get for James Bond if they were going to develop that? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll get back to everybody.